Hi everybody, today we're talking about phytochemicals, how plant compounds shape immunity, metabolism and long-term health. In terms of our diet, most of us were taught that health comes from the classic nutrients like protein, fats, carbohydrates, vitamins and minerals, but there's a whole other layer of biology that rarely gets explained. Plants contain thousands of bioactive compounds that aren't classed as essential nutrients, yet repeatedly show up in research on immunity, metabolism, brain health and chronic disease risk. These are phytochemicals. They don't necessarily work like drugs, they don't fix problems overnight, but over time they shape how your body responds to stress, inflammation, microbes and energy use. That's what we're unpacking today. Stay tuned to find out more. Okay, so what are phytochemicals? So phytochemicals are chemical compounds produced by plants. Now, plants make these chemicals to protect themselves against pests and pathogens, to cope with UV radiation and drought, and to regulate growth and stress, and also to interact with microbes in the environment. Now, when humans eat plants, some of these compounds interact with our own cells, and our gut microbes as well, and also our overall immune system. Now, major families of these chemicals include polyphenols, so you can find these in berries and other dark fruits, in teas and cocoa and olives, and there's also carotenoids. Now these are found in things like carrots and tomatoes and leafy greens, and then there's glucosinolates, so these are found in broccoli, kale, cabbage, so there's very deep green vegetables, and there's also what's called organosulfur compounds, and now these are found in garlic and onions. So these are just some of the major families of these compounds. Now there's important clarification here, so phytochemicals are not vitamins, so you don't get a classic defined deficiency disease if you miss one. Instead, they influence how biological systems behave over time. Now, you'll often hear that plants contain thousands of phytochemicals. Now, that's true across the plant kingdom, but no one consumes all of them or needs to. Now, the plant kingdom on Earth comprises around 400,000 species worldwide, and around 7,000 plant species have been used as a food source throughout history. But only 150 to 200 plant species are eaten regularly today, and of those only 15 crops provide up to 90% of global calories, and many of us only consume a couple of these species or varieties each week. Now, health benefits consistently track with a variety of plant exposure rather than a single miracle compound. So chemical diversity provided by these plants is key, and that's the main reason these numbers matter. So what do phytochemicals actually do in the body? Well, one, they act as biological signals, not just antioxidants. So early research focused on antioxidants, and we now know that in humans, many phytochemicals act by influencing cell signaling pathways. Our bodies are made up of millions of cells and they need to communicate with each other. And these chemicals found in plants can influence how these cells communicate with each other. So there are pathways called oxidative stress response systems and inflammatory signaling pathways in the body. Now, this has been demonstrated across cell and animal models and supported indirectly by human intervention trials showing changes in what we call biomarkers. Now, the key idea is a weird term called hormesis. So small challenges help the body adapt and get stronger. So plant compounds act like gentle training for your cells. 2. They shape immune regulation. Now, a healthy immune system isn't one that's permanently switched on. It needs to 1. Respond strongly to real threats, 2. Stand down when the job is done, and 3. Tolerate harmless stimuli. It's thought that many phytochemicals help the body keep inflammation in balance, damping down chronic, low-grade inflammation without shutting down healthy immune responses. In terms of human evidence, there's been meta-analyses of randomized controlled trials that show polyphenol-rich interventions can improve metabolic risk markers, often including inflammatory markers, especially in people with elevated baseline risk. Now, the effects are often modest, variable and context dependent, which is exactly what we'd expect for dietary exposures. This supports the idea that phytochemicals help the immune system become better regulated, rather than necessarily stronger in a crude sense. 3. They operate heavily through the gut immune interface. Now, this part is crucial, so a large proportion of immune activity occurs in and around the gut or the gastrointestinal system. Now, many phytochemicals are poorly absorbed in the small intestine, they reach the colon intact and are transformed by gut microbes into metabolites, so just various other forms of chemicals that interact with human biology. Now, human trials and systematic reviews show that polyphenol-rich foods can shift gut microbial composition, and microbial metabolites linked to immune and metabolic regulation increase. Now, various stress markers can change alongside these shifts. So these are just little chemical markers or biological markers that indicate different levels of stress in the body. This likely explains why whole plant foods often outperform isolated supplements, and responses vary between individuals. Your microbiome is part of the mechanism. 4. They influence metabolism and energy regulation. So phytochemicals also intersect with metabolic health, so the health of our metabolic system. Across large observational studies and intervention trials, diets rich in diverse plant compounds are associated with improved insulin sensitivity, better lipid profiles, so these are kind of tiny fat molecules, and reduced cardio and metabolic disease risk. Again, this doesn't imply a single compound fixes metabolism. It reflects many small effects layered over time, influencing things like inflammation, so the body's kind of immune response, oxidative stress, gut-derived signaling molecules, so these kind of molecules that are produced A by the gut cells themselves and B by the microbes that live in your gut. And now these signaling molecules play a key role in keeping our body healthy and thriving, and also in energy partitioning. Now, metabolic health is largely emergent, and we think phytochemicals are one of the contributors. 5. Brain and long-term health links. Large cohort studies associate higher intake of flavonoid-rich diets with lower risk of cognitive decline and dementia, and better long-term brain health trajectories. Now, these are associations, not proof of causation, but they're robust, biologically plausible, and consistent with gut-brain and inflammation pathways studied experimentally. This is why phytochemicals are increasingly discussed in preventive, not therapeutic, contexts. Okay, so what phytochemicals do not do? So there's an important reality check here. So phytochemicals do not detox your body overnight, they don't replace medical treatment, and they don't compensate for chronic sleep loss, inactivity, or extreme stress, etc. They also don't act as magic bullets when isolated into supplements. Now, their effects are gradual, cumulative, and context dependent. They work best as part of long-term dietary patterns rather than short-term hacks. Here's 3 practical evidence-aligned takeaways. Takeaway 1. Prioritise plant diversity, not perfection. Evidence increasingly supports diversity of plant compounds rather than chasing single foods. Practical goal. Rotate vegetables and fruits, so try out different kinds of fruit and vegetables every single week if you can. Mix legumes and grains and herbs and spices. Now, you may have seen other videos I've done on things like the rainbow diet, so consuming lots of different coloured fruits and vegetables, etc. And up to 30 plants a week if you can. Now, this sounds like a lot, but remember that herbs and spices and also things like teas, these all count. They all contain these phytochemicals. So every day I have around 5 different teas. So I might have a ginger and a green tea in the morning, which has also been associated with favourable oral microbiome health. And then I might have a licorice tea, and then in the evening I might have a chamomile tea, and sometimes you get those sleepy teas that contain things like passion flower and valerian, chamomile, etc. as a mix. So getting lots of different kinds of these phytochemicals isn't as hard as it may seem. Now, even small amounts count if consumed consistently. So your biology responds better to a variety of signals, not just the volume of one. Takeaway 2. Feed your microbes, not just yourself. So you may have heard me say before, and I've quoted John Cryan on this, that you are what your gut microbes eat, because many phytochemicals work via the gut and the microbes living in the gut. So things like berries and teas and olive oil, brassicas, legumes, cocoa, etc. They aren't just healthy foods, they're inputs into microbial metabolism. You're feeding your internal ecosystem. Now, different microbes living in your gut ecosystem, they transform these different compounds, which is why personalised responses are normal. Takeaway 3. Think immune balance, not immune boosting. So a more accurate framing is supporting appropriate immune responses while avoiding chronic inflammation. That aligns with how phytochemicals are discussed in immunology and nutrition research. So if a product promises to boost immunity, be skeptical. If a dietary pattern supports regulation and resilience over time, that's where the evidence sits. Okay, so phytochemicals aren't essential nutrients in the classical sense. They're ecological signals, messages from plants that our bodies have evolved alongside. So you don't need all of them. You don't necessarily need supplements. But regular exposure to a diverse range of plant compounds shapes immune function, metabolism, and long-term health in ways the science increasingly supports. Now that's not magic, it's biology. If you found this video helpful or interesting, please do me a huge favour and like and subscribe to the channel, and please sign up to my newsletter. It's free over at www.jakemrobinson.com. And remember, stay wild, inside and out.